Yeah, I agree. So, because I have a motion, the treasurer told me to excavate some property.
Actually, I didn't see it.
So that's why I do it takes forever to get this done. Yes, I will demonstrate what I've done. The treasurer told me it looks 50, so I did.
Well, I don't know. I think Renee must have come up with a conversation between a couple board members. No need to respond.
Well, I got to remember Charles and where it's at.
So,
You bake them, you dry them out, and
Well, I have
then you
those
crush it.
The treasurer told me to look.
You don't want to have water in the teaspoon. You
He's
don't
not
want
going to be.
Onto your treasurer pro tem.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, because inside, yeah.
but, yeah, the shell, remember,
It's supposed to be really good for you.
yeah, eggshell, they take it apart with your joints, but
Yeah, I
there's
think
small
that's
amounts that they say, I was reading, they say it's enough for shells, the eggshell calcium, because of other proteins actually in eggshell that we don't get with standard calcium supplements. And I was like, what?
You just don't want to do it.
Yeah. And all the shells are not gonna be documented and chocolate and capsules and everything.
Yeah.
And they would give me something.
Somewhere broker.
Yeah. It's so cool.
Yeah, I got a correction.
Oh, you do? No, yeah, you said that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right now, everybody thinks more sense.
Yeah, no, it's they're fun too.
Yeah, I know. The ones I got last year don't have the same personality that my old ones have, because I just got layered, segments, and they're a little boring, but they lay a lot, they do a lot.
Did you? Yeah, we have,
Appreciate you all waiting. You go watch it. Yes, you are.
yeah.
everyone ready? Meeting is called to order.
I'll say you work this way.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And roll.
Charles Stewart.
Here.
Mine has it updated. Mary Cochran. Here. Bill Bear.
Here.
Carolyn Deal.
Here.
Karen Budinger. Here. Dave Knudsen.
Here.
Michelle Patterson. Here.
We have a quorum and we can continue. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. The next item is announcements. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here. We have limited the agenda to time-sensitive and critical items. The goal tonight is to move through the agenda fairly quickly and put in place those procedures that will allow the board to continue to function and to make sure that the town is able to continue to provide basic essential services. We do not have any staff here tonight other than the town administrator. The town attorney is appearing by telephone. As is our practice, this meeting is being live streamed for the public. This clearly is a difficult time in which this community needs to work together, and we need to work with the county and with the state and federal government to bring this crisis to a successful conclusion. Visitors and guests. That is the next item on the agenda, unless there's any other announcements. Any other announcements by any board member? I'm not hearing any. We will move forward with visitors and guests. This is an opportunity for visitors to address the board on a matter that is not on the agenda. Tonight I am going to limit visitors and guests to 2 minutes. If you wish to speak, you need to come forward, introduce yourself, and state your name and address, please.
Hey everybody, Thomas Marco, 302 2nd Street. My question is actually for Travis, but hopefully someone else here can help me. I gave a call in last week asking whether or not and which parts of town are served by gravity-fed water. It's my understanding that portions of town, like downtown, does not require pumps to maintain water pressure, and I want to make sure, one, that was true, and two, where the boundaries of that portion are. So if anybody here can help me.
Is that something you can respond to, Ms. Ferguson, or would you prefer to have Mr. Loper respond?
I would prefer to gather complete and accurate information from Public Works Director Loper,
Right.
which I'd be happy to do and provide to you. I'll ask him tomorrow.
Yeah, I also would like to, I understand Travis is a busy guy, but a phone call would suffice. It seems very disrespectful and unprofessional to be ignored in this way. Thank you. Yes.
Are you referring to potable water?
Yes. Town drinking water. It's my understanding there were pressure reducing valves placed on certain areas around town, and based on the water studies, there were portions that spoke about using a micro hydro system, which to my thinking means that it's gravity fed, and there's like, we have extra water pressure, but I just don't know what parts are.
Thank you. I'll wait for Mr.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Do we have anyone else? Yes. You're welcome.
Hi, Suzanne Watson, 903 2nd Street. I just wanted to point out that I submitted some written comments tonight. You don't have to consider them all tonight, but there are concerns I had about access to town hall and information while this crisis is happening. So they're somewhat general, but it's to think about in the coming meetings when you're setting policy or trying to figure out solutions. So if you could consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Please come forward.
Stephen Keenan, 514 3rd. Good evening, Council. So I think that it's not business as usual, obviously, but I do feel it's your responsibilities in that the community looks upon you all as leaders. And I think using the local radio station could be a really good idea right now. People are going to want to hear from the outgoing mayor right now, plain and simple. You know, at least Charles has done a lot of service in this town, and people are going to listen to what he has to say. You know, in Singapore, they're teaching the kids new songs, and they're called hand marching songs. And I think if there's anything that you as mayor can be doing right now is to get the community to be feeling good about things. Suggest a hand marching song contest. Let's make sure that the teenagers understand that they might be feeling rock and roll in springtime, but they can be passing this off to their elderly relatives. We need to make sure people know that. I think this is going to be the most fabulous gardening season we've ever had in Delta County. And so I think that you as mayor, too, it might be a good idea to have some sort of empowerment where the people need to have a little bit of communication with the community, where they at least know that it's available. We give out little, those little petri dishes of soil and seeds, and just to get the whole community. This is an opportunity for us. It's disappointing for me when I'm listening to the national news that they're not focusing on immunity. And this is a time for our community here to be really empowering this community that we are immunity central. We're surrounded by the mountains. and protected, and we have a huge knowledge base in this community about healthy living. On a spiritual level, we have 23 Christian churches here downtown. On a health food level, so I really think this is a time where we can really shine for the rest of the state, because a lot of people are going to be looking at this community and others and wishing they were living here, because it's a whole lot easier to do social distancing here than downtown Denver. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. I will take them to heart. As your first suggestion, however, I don't think you've ever heard me sing, so I don't know if that, I don't think you've ever heard me sing, so as to your first suggestion, that
You
would not be
never
that.
heard me say what?
You've never heard me sing,
Well,
so that might be a detriment.
well, I think singing's a contest for the children.
Yeah.
On any level, something where the kids are feeling empowered. They've got a lot of time on their hands right now.
Thank you very much. I am taking at this point, we have no other comments from visitors since we have Brent out of visitors. So we will move forward. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda, the regular meeting minutes from February 25th and the liquor license transfer from Ensemble LLC, DBA Salt Pollen to Flying Fork Cafe. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion?
There were just some minor corrections I wanted to make to the minutes.
Why don't you go ahead and make those?
Okay. First one is under, at the very top of the minutes, I think trustee Deal's first name should be included. The first name's not included in the rest of us. Underneath the recognition of service, I think the judge said something significant but oddly in the minutes. And the judge thanked the current and former trustees and felt no political pressure during his tenure. So I think that adding that was important because he really appreciated what past councils and current councils have left him to do his job. And then the last one is, see if I can find it. Down underneath the treasurer's report, the last bullet, document needs to be plural, and that's it.
With those 3 changes, everyone in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We will move on to the mayor's report. Yesterday, I did sign an order declaring a local disaster for the town of Paonia. The order is on the agenda, and we will discuss it and take whatever additional action may be necessary at that time. That is the only thing that I am reporting on. We will move forward to staff reports. Ms. Ferguson, the administrative report.
Okay, I have a few different things. Right off the bat, I do want to let everyone know that with the notification and asking people to stay at home and participate via YouTube, there is a slight delay. So as we go through the agenda items, we may have questions that come in a little bit late as far as the community participation plan, and I'll do my best to address them as they come in. Also, I did want to just give a little bit of information specific to the police department and public works. Most of what I have to report is specific to the situation we're in right now with COVID-19. So if there's any questions about standard business, which is also still taking place, let me know. For the police department specific, the municipal court that would be held typically the first Thursday of the month, which would be April 2nd, has been canceled. And right now it's tentatively rescheduled for the first Tuesday in May, depending on the outcome and the lifting of restrictions. The officers are monitoring and ordering as needed to the best of their capability all personal protection equipment for all of the officers. That is a need that we have, and we're working diligently with Delta County and the Emergency Operations to address those needs. The police officers are individually contacting and informing the open businesses, specifically in our downtown core area, of the requirement for self-certification for implementing the executive order with requiring a 50% reduction in staff and or the social distancing policy. Specific to public works, they are continuing to address the essential needs. They are working on potholes. May have noticed some were filled yesterday and today, and they will continue to do that as an essential function, along with monitoring the treatment plant, maintenance of the treatment plants, and trash services. We have amped up safety and personal protection equipment for trash services. They are using gloves and masks as needed when they are handling public trash. We have ordered the removal of the portable bathrooms from the town parks due to the fact that we are not able to provide them the necessary, and the contractor that we rent them from are not able to provide the necessary hand washing and routine disinfectant and maintenance. So those will be removed for the time being. And we are addressing the best way to post closures to the park to also assist with limiting social activity, as well as try to keep people, especially children, off of the park equipment, which is not cleaned and disinfected in any kind of a consistent basis either. I continue to participate in multiple agency conference calls, including a business support conference call and daily calls with the Emergency Operations Center. These calls have someone from each community representative, the county, the Emergency Operations Command, and the Southwest Incident Management, the SWIM team, you may remember from our incident last year. And it also includes regular contact with the county and our local volunteer coordinator. And we are, of course, tracking all expenditures related and utilizing all other mechanisms that have been provided that we need to, so that we are adequately and accurately tracking all of our time and expenses directly involved in COVID. And I believe that's all I have at this time.
Questions for Administrator Ferguson from members of the board? Yes, Trustee Barrett.
Just one question, and it relates to the street sweeper. Are there any updates on that?
Yes, they've made all repairs except one seal is ordered and they're waiting for it to be delivered. They could operate without the seal, but it leaks oil, and we determined that it was not in the best interest to leak oil on the street when we're trying to clean it. So we're waiting for that to come in.
Other questions from members of the board? Yes, Trustee Dean.
When all this is over and things settle down, are they going to clean the playground equipment at the park, just in case people have been touching it?
Yes.
Any other questions from members of the board? Yes, Trustee Dean.
Mr. Mayor, I was wondering if we could place a sign by the playground equipment, because I don't think a lot of parents are hearing this meeting or are aware of this meeting, and it may be worthwhile to say, use at your own risk, please disinfect, or I don't know what, but some kind of warning at the playgrounds.
Yes, we are looking into the creation and placement of signs strategically in Apple Valley Park, Lee's Park, and the town park.
Any other questions from members of the board? Yes, Trustee Patterson.
So the task list that I shared with everyone was shared with me by a member of the public as an example of a way that we might share information while the town is close to the public. So it's something that we might be able to post on the front door with highest town priorities and who's working on it, or who to contact with questions, things like that. So I just wanted to share that.
Any other questions?
That
from
number
members of the board? Yes, Trustee Cobb.
Well, in speaking to that, I did have a short conversation with people over at High Country Shopper about the possibility of having a small column in the shopper every week that says what the town is doing. And maybe we might need to implement that, might be having to talk to them again about that.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the board? Hearing none. Questions from members of the public for Administrator Ferguson? Yes, please, Ms. Watson, come forward.
So this order by the governor, when they're talking about this businesses? Is it all businesses across the board, or does he exempt certain businesses like offices? I don't know if you have any, what could be considered offices.
There are some exemptions and definitions of what is considered an essential and non-essential business.
Okay, so are you giving this to the business owners, or are you just asking everybody to maintain these kind of precautions?
We're providing it to the businesses that have remained open.
Okay, thanks.
I would mention, if you go to the Colorado Department of Health website, they have a very good and detailed list of various orders that are in place, and there's actually an explanation of each order. So that is a good resource for members of the community.
Thanks.
Do you have anyone else? Yes, please, come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, on this thought about using the local radio station, you know, it's on the Belmont building. When you're in Washington, D.C., and you want to go see Michelle and Barack Obama, they live on Belmont Street. That's where their new house is. And the first ever radio announcement ever in the history of the world was on my birthday, a few years ago. But it is something that I feel connected with. And I do feel that this is a time for you as mayor to be on the radio and suggest to the community, let's have a moratorium on collecting rents. I mean, if people hear it from you, you've got the authority, and people trust you. And I think just one comment like that is going to help a lot of people in this town when it comes time to discussing with the landlord, what am I going to do about April 1st rent? And I'm not working. If they hear from you, you know, because it does sound a little socialist, depending on how you look at things, and I'm not declaring that we should advocate socialism by any means. I do like it the way our governor has called out President Trump on some of his socialistic tendencies towards the big corporations. It's a Colorado-based news stream. I don't like the name of it, but I highly recommend everyone in this room spend a little time looking at the article about helicopter money. We have a site here on the internet that's based in Colorado. I don't like the name, but I was voted out. DollarCollapse.com. We update it a few times every day. There's probably 24 articles talking about what's going on right now, published in the last few hours. The helicopter one being a very good one to read. I think that when it comes time to be discussing things with our bond people, spending a little time on DollarCollapse.com is going to benefit this town a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean, can I ask one more question about?
Hang on half a second.
Really?
I do want to respond part to this because it is my understanding that there was an order issued by the governor's office that does put some limits on evictions and foreclosures during the crisis. I have not had a chance to fully digest that, and so I don't know exactly what the restrictions are. But if there are people that are facing eviction, yes, Bo, thank you for chiming in.
All right, yes, that is correct. In essence, the courts are not accepting new FED or Rule 120 filings at the present moment.
Okay, so the bottom line is right now, given that order, neither evictions or foreclosures can go forward. So I'll make sure that everyone has that information. Yes, Mr. Ross would like that. And again, this really has to do with questions for the town administrator, not just general questions, but specifically what the town administrator reported on.
I just want to, I think, when you did say Mary Bachner talked to the high country shopper, was that you? No, I have no idea. Can I just comment on that? I think, I know financially this whole coronavirus might be difficult for the town with our sales tax revenue and the festival season coming up. But I do want to say, the high country shopper will be suffering from this too, because I know major advertisers have pulled out of their publication. And if the town does any work with the high country shopper, it's nice to think that they would be a community service for us, but at the same time I feel like there might be some payment to them for hosting our product, let's say, just to help them with their, their business. And it would be nice to get something out of it, probably for them, and at the same time, they would help us out with what, so it's just to consider that if you do go that route. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is board approval to suspend disconnection of services, waive late fees, and offset online payment fees through April 30th, 2020. Ms. Burris, would you like to address this?
Yes, so currently what we did for the month of March was I did not process the late fees for payments that came in after the due date, or when the late fee would normally be applied, in an effort as well to recognize and realize that people are trying to send in their payments and use other payment methods outside of their usual, which is to come in. Most of our payments are in-office payments. People come in and they pay in cash or check in the office. What I am asking of the board is that to go above and beyond 1 month of a waiving of a fee. I was looking for board support to be able to do that. Now, not only is that the late fee, but the other fee that I did look at and wanted to suggest was the fee that Point and Pay charges to the user when they do an online payment via credit card or checking account draft. I do realize as well that the town may and will see some impact to our budget throughout the year based on sales tax and such going to this event. I did look at a previous month's history, and typically those fees are about $175 to $180 a month that are assessed to the customer. These are not fees that the town assesses. This is not money that the town receives. So in order for the town to offset any charges for someone who chose to utilize online payments instead of coming into the office, the only way that we could apply that to the account would be to go in and apply as a credit adjustment. We have the capability to show that. We can include it, of course redacted as far as who the customer was, but we can show the amount of the payment, what the fee was, and then be able to cross-reference that to the account that it was applied to if there was ever any question or concern that credits were not being applied appropriately. So that basically is the gist of it. I'm open to questions.
Go ahead, Trustee Parker.
So then will the town pick up those fees? Would the servicing company waive those fees? What would happen to all of that?
The fees would still go to the servicing company of the online payment, which is Point and Pay, and the way that the fee would be collected, the way that it would work for the town is basically an adjustment to the account. It would be a credit adjustment to their account. So you would have to manually input the credit adjustment.
Other questions from board members? Yes, Trustee Butler.
Can the person just send in a check?
They can. Absolutely they can. It's just an alternative. And is just an alternative and another mechanism that we have that I wanted to make the board aware of if they were amenable to us doing so.
Other questions?
Yeah, just a comment, just in truth, there are people out there, the younger people who don't even have checking accounts.
Yes, Trustee James.
We passed those utility rate increases, and during part of that discussion, we also had like a forgiveness or a period where someone could request for assistance. Do we have anyone come in and ask for that?
For using the utility relief program that we implemented?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, we have people that have done that.
Okay, the concern I have is that using a similar approach, I think would be good on actual forgiveness of water bills, because there are people that are paying $80 or $90 water bills that have lost their jobs completely. And it seems like using a similar mechanism could allow people at least that month or two. I know that's going to hit our utilities, but I'm thinking of the people in town who are like waiters and waitresses and clerks and people like that that are just handing them out. This is how the town could step up.
Other questions, comments from members of the board? I do have a couple questions. The first, a comment. This basically is something that would only lasts until April 30th. And so the idea is to have something that is temporary in nature so that in fact we can address the situation immediately. Obviously, we don't know where the economy is going to be once we get a grip on the virus, and there may very well be the necessity of doing additional things to give some sort of utility relief. I would point out that this really, at this juncture, is really a short-term solution, and it may very well be that the same issue will be back before the board trying to figure out a long-term solution. And one of the problems, we've got folks that may qualify for leave, but we're going to have people that would not qualify for leave, but we're certainly going to discover that they can't pay the bills. So, you know, we really need to deal with this in terms of the short term, at least from now, in my opinion. One of the questions I have is just trying to get a sense of what it would cost if, in fact, we credit the users for the online payment fee. You know roughly what that would be?
Right now, with the standard users, of course, it's going to be higher. I would anticipate it will be higher, but on average, it's about $180 a month is the fees that are being collected by Point and Pay.
Okay, so it's relatively small.
It is, and I was remiss, I did have it written down on another piece of paper that, to mention as well to the board that I would hope that the board and the administrative offices as well could start thinking of ways and opportunities that we have to support the businesses and individual users. And so I realize that this is very nominal and doesn't apply across the board, but it was an initial starting point when we were putting together this, right now in the mix of it.
Any other questions for Administrator Ferguson for members of the board? Yes, Trustee Patrick.
So I understand that this is a short-term solution and that there may be more coming. And just knowing that there may be more coming, I wonder if staff could start putting together sort of a bare bones version of the budget for the year in preparation for what additional steps we might need to take so that we have those numbers in front of us and we can see pretty clearly where those cuts might happen.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the board?
Well,
Yes.
I think the main thing is that in this request for people that need relief, if they don't pay their bills, we have a moratorium on shutting them off for now. And so at least that gets us started, and then we can move from there. So I understand what the mayor's saying. Short term's good.
Trustee Bauer?
That's good.
Okay, let's do this. Let's get a motion on the table. I would entertain a motion to approve the suspension of disconnection of services, to waive late fees and offset online payment fees through April 30th, 2020. Trustee
I
Bauer?
move that we approve the disconnection, suspension, and late fee waiver and offset of payments. These two is approved.
Do we have a second on
Second.
that motion? Any further discussion from the board? Anything from the public specific to the issue? Ms. Watson?
I'm a little curious about how much does the online payment fee, how much is it per transaction?
Approximately 2.8% for a credit card and it's flat $2 if you use your checking account.
Okay, because I want to say some people do mail their bills in and should they be granted a refund of 55 cents for the stamp they use. You know, we have the U.S. Postal Service. It's a very valuable institution. And, they struggle to stay in business. And it's very democratic. It's part of our country. And when we start encouraging people to do these online payments, we are undermining this institution that has served us so well for so long. So I don't know, I think the online thing is about convenience. There are people who don't have computers, who can't even afford to do things online. I know you say there are people who don't have checking accounts, But we also have a payment box out here, and I know maybe if you're sick, it's gonna be hard to like walk up to that payment box, but it sounds like we're gonna have a waiving of late fees, so if you get it in a little late. I'm wondering if on the utility bill, you might mention the fact that there's a box that you can make payments, and make sure you wear a glove or use a tissue when you open the cover. Or you let people know you disinfect it regularly, or whatever. But aside from that, I think the moratorium on late fees is a good idea, and you might consider a payment plan for people who end up in 2 months with a big utility bill. Maybe you don't wait it, because we only have 600 to 800 taxpayers in this town, right? Taxpaying residents. So when you start taking a chunk of those people, and you're giving them like, someone else has to pick up the tab. Money doesn't fall out of the sky here in this town. We all have to pay for it. So you're looking at kind of socialistic government, and it can be hard on other people too, that might not want to come forward and let you know that they're struggling. They might be too proud for that. And it's awful to force people into that position. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Please, come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to reiterate what Susan said. I think there's a lot of people in this town that could, depending on how long this goes on for, could start getting food insecure. I've been food insecure a bit at times, and I know that feeling. So I do feel that you as outgoing mayor and Corinne, being on the radio, this is the time to really be empowering this community. There's a lot, it's great that quite frankly, I've got some sardines for dinner tonight. It's wonderful that you have that there. If you reach out and ask the big ask, if you ask this community, we need help, and we've got a table for food down at Town Hall. Think about how much food is going to show up tomorrow. So I do feel that you could say to the community, I've just called the MEA, and I'm trying to get them to agree that there's a suspension on any disconnects. It's a cooperative. You're the mayor. You could call Black Hills Energy. Do you know that probably a lot of your people here in town don't realize that the cell phone companies, I called up mine, and I've been with them for 23 years. They said, you don't have to pay us any money until May 17th. So there's all sorts of extensions that you're giving me free international calls. So, not to everywhere, but there's a lot that you use in the radio. It's the best community radio station in America. This is the time for you and Corinne to be using it. And a lot of your people probably don't realize that if you call your cell phone company, they're not going to cut you off if you ask.
Thank you. I do think from notices I have already received that most utility providers are doing something very similar to what we are contemplating tonight. I also think most are looking at the short term, because obviously everyone's trying to deal with the immediate problem. And once we deal with the immediate problem, everyone's going to have to start thinking about how we go forward from there. But at this juncture, we really don't need to resolve that issue. The board may very well need to resolve that issue in the future, but tonight what we're talking about is through April 30th. So we have a motion and a second to approve the suspension of the disconnection of utility services, the waiver of late fees, and the offset online payment fees through April 30th, 2020. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item on the agenda is disbursements. I would entertain a motion to approve disbursements. Trustee Budinger, or would someone like to make that motion?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve $35,682.28 for accounts payable, $19,325.75 for transfer to payroll, a $50,000 transfer to Summit, the payment to the Water Power Authority of $11,671.70, payroll taxes of $7,424.26, and finally a payroll direct deposit for $19,325.72.
Do we have a second on that?
Okay.
Discussion or questions from members of the board?
Mr. Mayor, I have several questions.
Yes, Trustee
One
Brown.
of them is the Elevate bill, $351. How many Elevate connections do we have?
I think there's 2 locations we're covering with that. I believe it's Town Hall. The only notes I took this afternoon's meeting were that we had 2 locations, Town Hall, and I believe it was one of the plants.
Well, I didn't think they were $175 each. That would be all.
We have multiple lines in Town Hall, and we also have designated lines for the police department and designated lines at the water treatment plant and the sewer treatment plant.
And that's for the Elevate.
Yes.
Okay. Next question is, who is TurboTrack?
How far down are you on, Trustee Beth?
What's that?
Which one are you on?
TurboTracks. Who is
It's
TurboTrack?
on the first page, almost at the
Six
top.
one.
Trail tracks, okay. It's the ballistic vests for public safety.
Okay, and thank you. And then lastly, the Wagner equipment bill for $12.95.
Yeah, once again, our skid steer is getting repaired.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Any other questions from members of the board? Yes, Mr. Cox.
Now, I was curious who Mr. Gordo, what that term is about?
Let me find it in a minute.
It's right below.
Yeah, this is SGM. This is part of the Minnesota Creek Sewer Line Engineering.
SGM Engineering.
SGM.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's shoes and
But you
going
think-
there.
God.
On to this person that looks like a person's name, and you wonder, how is that person getting so much money?
Any other questions from members of the board? I'm not hearing anything. Any questions from members of the public? I'm not hearing anything. We have a motion and a second to approve disbursements. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just a quick comment. The treasurer insisted that I look spiffy tonight, and so that's why I put the bow tie on.
I do like the bow tie. That is classic. Okay, next item on the agenda is modification of mayor's duties. This was requested by Finance and Personnel. Basically, changes to the ordinance regarding the powers of the mayor must be made within 60 days of an election. We are within that time frame. The state statute requires that if you limit the mayor to voting only in the case of a tie, the town must provide the mayor with the right to veto any ordinance or any resolution requiring the entering of a contract or the spending of money. That veto can be overridden, but that does require 2/3 of the governing body, which basically means that you need the vote of 5 trustees to override the veto. The town's current ordinance allows the mayor to vote only in the case of a tie, and that has been practiced throughout my tenure as mayor, and even when I was mayor pro tem, and we very well have been in practice for some time. But our ordinance does not state that the mayor has the right to veto. And that right is statutory. It has always been my position, regardless of the fact that our ordinance may be silent on that, but the state statute controls, and that is the power that the mayor has. So currently, we have a situation where the mayor votes only in a situation where there is a tie vote, and the mayor does have the right to veto. At the last meeting, the board directed the town attorney to go ahead and prepare an amended ordinance that would in fact include the requirements of state statute and include the mayor's right to veto. That proposed ordinance is included in the packet. So that's essentially where we are at. We can open this up for further discussion at this point, or we can go ahead and actually put a motion to adopt the ordinance on the table, whichever folks would prefer. Perhaps the discussion might be the best thing. And I'll be real straightforward in terms of the way I do. In my opinion, if you want to have a strong mayor, keep it the way it is. What I mean by that is giving the mayor the right to vote in case of a tie and the ability to veto. If the mayor has those powers, that I think is fairly substantial, because quite frankly, voting on matters that are not a tie, not terribly important. Voting on matters that are tied is very important. Plus, the veto is quite powerful. That is the circumstance that we have now, and it's worked fairly well. But if you want a strong mayor, my view is that, yes, you keep it the way it is, and basically vote to adopt this ordinance so that our ordinances match with the state statutes. It's also my view that if the board's desire is to weaken the position of the mayor, you give the mayor the right to vote on everything, but you don't give the mayor the right to veto. That does create a situation where perhaps the mayor is involved more in the debate and discussion because they need to vote. But it is a situation, I think, where, as I said, voting on matters that are not tied is not terribly important. So that's my personal view in terms of what the issue is. You know, where this board wishes to go, obviously it's up to the board. What was done at the last meeting was we gave direction to the town attorney to go ahead and amend the town ordinance so that in fact it would be clear that in fact the mayor would vote only in the case of the tie, and that the mayor would have the right to veto. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Any other discussion from members of the board? Trustee Knudsen?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I know I was not on the board at the time this was done, but I understand that there was a defining document at one point that delineated the mayor appointing committees and things like that. This ordinance does not affect that, is what I'm assuming?
I'm sorry, in terms of the powers of the mayor.
That the board delineated earlier. In other words, like you appoint two committees, there's some other duties that the board basically asks of you, and there was I don't know if it was an ordinance or resolution or what it was that gave you those duties, but I just wanted to make sure this doesn't negate that.
No, the language, and Mr. Nerlin, feel free to jump in, but my understanding in terms of the only change is making it clear that the mayor would have the right to veto. So the language is otherwise the same, and no other ordinance or resolution or rule that the board has previously passed has been changed. Is that correct, Mr. Nerlin?
That's correct. There was honestly a little bit of cleanup with respect to Section A 2220
Any questions from members of the board, Mr. Nerlin?
Second question is, with that paragraph C that our attorney referred to, it's really not clear to most people that read it what 2/3 actually means. Because when I look at a veto, the mayor's coming back to a board with a veto, and there are 6 members that are supposed to try to override that veto, so that tells me 4. Now, obviously, that might be wrong because I heard 5. It seems like that paragraph would be more clear if we actually said it takes 5 votes. And then we don't get into this fight later on about whether it's 4 or 5.
I don't know if that fight will go very far, because I think there is a statute that makes it very clear that the mayor is considered a member of the board of trustees, and so the board actually consists of 7 individuals. And to get to the 2/3 needed to override that veto, you would need 5 votes.
What if 6 people are at the meeting?
Quite frankly, the way I read it is the governing body, not the quorum. Is that the way you read it as well, Mr. Nerlin?
So, just to be clear, the question is whether or not the 2/3 would apply to 6, which would be 4 board members, or the 2/3 would apply to the 7, which would be 5 board members.
Yeah, that's the first portion of the question. And then the other question is whether that would apply in a situation where there was less than a full board, yet a quorum to continue. Those are the 2 questions. So why don't we deal with the first, which is whether the number of votes would have to be 5 or 4 if all 7 board members were present.
So, while I see the member as the mayor of the board for the purposes of a quorum, I guess I interpreted it that it would be 2/3 of the board of trustees, so it would be 4 board members.
That is the town attorney's opinion.
I think we have
I have a slightly different opinion, but he is the town attorney.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to adopt this ordinance with a correction to the wording.
The only concern I have with that, and again, Mr. Nerlin, correct me if I'm wrong, this language comes right out of the state statute, is that correct?
That's correct.
So I don't know if we can necessarily amend that language.
I guess I just want to hear what the correction is.
Yes, please.
So the sentence that says that 2/3 of the members of the Board of Trustees vote in the affirmative, that is 4 of the 6 members, and then that sentence continues.
Mr. Nerlin, did you hear the question or statement?
Yeah, that would be, so I get it, and I would agree with that perspective, but then I also take this perspective that if you don't have a full quorum, you would just need to have the 2/3 of the members present, and then if you insert the 4 of the 6, that math affects the 2/3 component of it.
2/3 of those present, not including the mayor.
Yeah.
Again, I have a slightly different opinion.
Right.
Go ahead. Yes, Trustee Patrick.
Would it be possible to reach out to the state and see if they would be willing to clarify that statute for us?
I don't know if we're necessarily going to get an opinion from the state. We might be able to get one from CML. That's a possibility.
Can I comment?
Hang on a second. We will get the public comment, but we'll see if we can, at least see if we can get a motion on the table or deal with this issue in some other fashion.
And would we adopt ordinance with trustee Kingston's edits? So to add in that two-thirds applies to two-thirds of board members present, not including the mayor.
We have a second on that.
I'll second that.
Let me tell you the reservation that I have, because I think we are changing language that is set out in state statute. We don't have that power to change that language. And I do think it is important that we have a clear understanding of what that means. Because my concern is that the state statutes basically say that the mayor is part of the board of trustees, and it's pretty clear. And if the state statute says two-thirds of the members of the board of trustees, that in fact means that you have to have 5 votes to override. And usually when you get to overriding any veto, it takes more than a majority of the body to do so. So I do think that might be what's intended, and I guess I wouldn't want the board to vote on a matter, adopt an ordinance, if it is unclear as to what it means. And 2, I would be concerned about changing language to set out the statute, because if you do that somewhere down the road, there is a battle between the mayor and a couple of trustees on the board versus the rest of the trustees on the board. You could find yourself in litigation arguing about exactly what this means. So it might make some sense to have Mr. Irwin take a look at this again. We have a meeting that hopefully will occur hopefully electronically in the second week of April, and this board will also deal with old business in the second week of April, well, second week of April.
If I'm understanding it right, we have to act on this before the election. That's the
correct.
That is my understanding.
That is correct. That is correct. So we have to be, that's correct. That's
So
correct.
I would modify my motion to move that we adopt the ordinance with the recommended edit pending review by DNL and their position that we're not in any conflict with state statute.
Second.
Does that not again put us in exactly the same position in that if we pass the ordinance, then we cannot touch the ordinance for 4 years because it has to be done before the election. So if we're in conflict, then we're stuck with it for 4 years. If we're not in conflict, then yeah, we're up against the deadline. That's the problem.
Right. And again, thank you for reminding me this does need to be done prior to April 7th. I appreciate that. So we really do need to address it.
Mr. Mayor?
Right. Yes.
I think we have to decide as a board whether to take your advice or the advice of our town attorney. And our town attorney, if I'm hearing you correctly, is saying 4 out of 6. And so if we vote that and we find out later it's error, that would be something that would have to be cleaned up before the next mayoral election. But right now, we have 2 conflicting opinions about this. And I think we just need to vote whether we agree with one opinion or the other.
Sure. No, I think that's quite appropriate. And I do work on the premise that this board needs to take the advice of the town attorney. That's why we have a town attorney. But we do have now a motion on the table, and I believe we've gotten a second.
So I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Okay.
And the reason for that is I think since we do have the town attorney and if the town attorney can provide advice on the interpretation of the state statute, we can adopt the ordinance as written and rely on the town attorney to continue providing advice if there's any conflict.
I do think that if this board passes it as written, that makes the most sense because that matches what is in the state statute. And that's what we're down at. Yes.
While we've been discussing this, I guess, I still take the position that it would be 2/3 present, but I do actually concur with your opinion that it would be the 5-7 and not the 4-6, because I found that 31-4-302, it does cite that you would be considered a member of the Board of Trustees, and I think therefore you have to extrapolate that same opinion for the veto power.
Okay, that's it.
So it just seems to me that probably the safest thing to do, if the desire is to have the mayor vote only if there is a tie, and give the mayor the veto right, is to pass this ordinance the way it is written, because this ordinance, the way it is written, matches the state statute. And that is the power that the mayor has in that circumstance. And we really don't have the ability to change that, because that is dictated by state statute.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. This is what we're trying to do now, right? Ordinance number 2020-03, ordinance of Town of County of Colorado, amending the enumerated authority provided to the mayor of the town with no amendments or changes. And I'm sorry for bringing all this up, but I was trying to get that off of future arguments.
No, it is good to have this discussion now. That's the reason why we have these meetings.
Mayor Stewart,
Yes.
before you get a second to that motion, in my minute notation, I have that the amended motion pending review of CML was withdrawn, but the motion adding the 2/3 board member present, not including the mayor, motion and second still stands.
That was you, trustee Knudsen.
Yeah, I'd like to withdraw that motion.
So I want to make sure everybody understands what we have on the table. I think the bottom line, what we have is a motion to adopt the ordinance as it is currently drafted. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and we have a second on that? Second. Okay. Any further discussion from the board? I am not hearing anything. Anything from the public? Yes, Roger.
I forgot to bring my copy with me, so when I read it, I also read it with David Knudsen's interpretation, and so I'm kind of at a loss because I'd like to look at it again. But I guess I just don't understand if the mayor, so it's not 2/3 of the voting body, it's 2/3 of the entire council, which includes the mayor, like 2/3 of the quorum, is that how that goes?
It does not refer to a quorum, and that's why I interpret that as 2/3 of the body of the board of trustees, not 2/3 of a quorum. Now, it may be that Mr. Nerlin has a different view of that, but I read that as basically requiring 5 votes.
It's interesting because, I mean, we have two scenarios where you could have a mayor voting all the time, and I see that as 7 members of the voting body, and 2/3 would definitely be 5. But if the mayor doesn't generally vote, how can he be, I mean, so is it 2/3 of the entire body, even the non-voting member? Or is it, so to me it's unfortunate that that statute is that ambiguous. It seems a little unclear. And this kind of thing is what causes a lot of problems. You know, when people try to understand stuff. And
That is true. That is true. That's why you end up with court cases, and then ultimately people get guidance from court cases. I guess the problem is that the language itself basically says that shall the ordinance resolution notwithstanding the mayor's objection be passed if 2/3 of the members of the board of trustees vote in the affirmative, such resolution shall be valid. In other words, it takes 2/3 of the members of the board of trustees, and there is another statute that specifically provides that the mayor is a member of the board of trustees. And so, and it doesn't refer to 2/3 of a quorum. It talks about 2/3 of the board of trustees, and 2/3 would require 5 votes. So that is the way I interpret it. It may be that Mr. Merlin has a slightly different view, and yes, you could end up, I guess, at some juncture having some judge deciding which view is correct.
I think the thing that makes it confusing for members of the public is, for instance, when we're voting, we aren't voting for 6 trustees this time. We're voting for 5 trustees and a mayor. So it's kind of weird how sometimes it works one way and sometimes it seems to work another way. We don't list it as 6 trustees and one of the trustees is the mayor. And that's where I'm a little bit, and yeah, that's where I'm a little confused.
Mr. Mayor, the reason you're voting for 5 is because trustee Bachman's term is technically not up. So not all 6 of us are up for re-election.
Exactly, but I mean, we aren't saying that, okay, 7, we don't have 7 seats open. We don't have 6, even if trustees, you know what I'm saying? It's like the mayor's a separate category. They're not listed as a trustee when we're voting, and that's what's confusing.
Yeah, I think the confusion is the fact that we talk about board of trustees, but we don't refer to the mayor as a trustee. We refer to the mayor as the mayor.
Yeah.
The issue is that the statutes, I think, are pretty clear in providing that the mayor is a member of the board of trustees.
Yeah.
So even though we may speak in terms of trustees, the mayor, we are all part of the same board.
And I suppose if the mayor starts abusing the veto power, whether it be Bill Bruner or Mary Bachman, they could be subject to a recall if they made it difficult on the people of the town with vetoes. So, thanks.
That is correct. Any other comments from members of the public?
Mr. Mayor, I think that this, since there is some questions, I understand this block. I'm sure that it's been litigated in the past. Should have come up before, and maybe the town attorney could do a little bit of research and come back to us.
A couple issues. I mean, one, I don't know if there is any case law interpreting this particular ordinance. I did not see such annotations, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't. The other thing is, in terms of directing the town attorney, he would not be able to get back to us until the first meeting in April, which is after the 7th. So if we're going to act, we need to act. And quite frankly, I think if you do nothing, this will be the law, because basically any mayor with the existing ordinance could come in and say, guess what, I don't care what is in your ordinance, the state statute gives me the power to veto. So, quite frankly, if you don't pass it the way it is currently, that power still exists. What this does is clarify that so everybody understands that power exists.
Well, I agree with that. Maybe you could just also give these family thing. We're going to act on it tonight, one way or the other. It would be interesting to see if there was need to bring back to the board.
Sure. And quite frankly, that would not necessarily hurt that we get some additional information in the next meeting. Hang on, Ms. Watson.
So, in the event that it passes, we'd be happy to put together an opinion that details what the 2/3 equals, and then with respect to what the veto needs to accomplish, if it's the full board or if it's the president or the.
That might be helpful to get that kind of direction in advance of any kind of dispute. I think that might be helpful. Any other comments or questions?
Mayor Stewart.
Yes.
You may have already addressed it, but for clarification for a member of the public viewing, they did ask for clarification that this is the discussion that took place at the last meeting where the majority decision was made to direct the attorney to draft that the mayor would not have a standing vote.
That is correct. That was the decision that was made at the last meeting to have the town attorney draft the ordinance. That's why we have the ordinance in its current form.
Thank
So
you.
that is correct. Okay. I am not hearing anything else. Ms. Watson, brief comment?
Not answering your question.
Okay. We have a trustee Hughes, it looks like we've already.
Just one final comment, just etch in our minds, to override a veto, it takes 5 votes.
Not necessarily that people need to hear what the opinion of the attorney is. You know, it's going to be read the way it is, we're going to pass it the way it is. But to dispel any uncertainty in people's minds, I think the attorney needs to come back with an opinion.
Okay. Yes, I do think what I heard from this board is this board wishes to have the mayor have a vote only in the case of a tie. If that is the wish of the board, which it appears to be, then this language regarding the veto has to be in our ordinance, comes right out of state statute. That is what's in the proposed ordinance. So we have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 2020-03. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, we will move forward to new business. The next item is board ratification of town administrator's COVID-19 response plan. In the packet is the response plan that the town administrator has put into effect. Ms. Ferguson, would you like to address it?
That is correct. The draft was primarily completed and provided to the town through the town attorney and modified, of course, to fit the town of Paonia. It outlines the plan for continuity of the town operations, how we would phase in different response plans and how we would continue communication in effect to the COVID-19 situation.
Well, let's do this so that we can move this forward. And we will have a discussion as soon as there is a motion on the table. At this point, I would entertain a motion to ratify the town administrator's COVID-19 response plan.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the board ratify the town administrator's COVID-19 response plan.
Do we have a second? Discussion from members of the board. Yes.
I have a question as to under critical and essential operations, Public Works, their bottom bullet point is assist with quarantine operations. How would exactly they be assisting with quarantine operations?
If our police department is limited, one way that I could potentially see them participating would be if they needed to pass out any kind of paper material, provide information, any kind of door-to-door or facilitating spreading information, similar to the way that the police department participated in conjunction with Public Works when they were providing notification during our water situation door-to-door. That would be one way they may participate.
Any other questions? Yes, Trustee Barrett.
Just a comment that I think that if part of this plan are implemented, it would be vitally important that you put the information on the website or disseminate it somehow that the public is aware of what's going on and what actions are being taken.
I agree, and in doing so, updates are being almost daily on the website.
Is there any way to do something kind of like the school does when they shut down schools or whatever, where they send out a mass text or mass phone calls, that you could hit a button that calls everybody in town who recorded a message, hey, this is what's going on? Is there any way to implement something like that?
We participate in the Code Red, but that's a countywide operation, and I would be hesitant to try to task Delta County Emergency Operation Command that's dealing with all the different jurisdictions in the county to do any type of Code Red call out specific to our community only.
Is there any way we could maybe look into something that we could do just for the community?
I'm sure there's programs we could purchase and implement, but that would also require working in conjunction with Delta County's GIS department in order for us to accurately and adequately map that. Right now, it covers, our call area covers not only in town, but also the water and people that are on the outside of town, on the periphery that are provided services from the town. Could we implement something like that? I do believe we could. It may be difficult to add that task onto everything else that we're doing currently for this situation.
Any other questions? Yes, Dr. Cass.
So I think this is really where the task list should come in. And it may, just given town the capacity of staff, it may make more sense to just take whatever you're putting on the website, print it out, put it up on the window, just a way for people who don't have internet access, particularly with our libraries closed, to also get that information.
And we have been providing some updated information on the windows, including the resolutions and ordinances that are on the agenda this evening. They are posted on the side window as well.
Any other questions from members of the board?
This may not be very feasible, but I noticed in the building, our building inspector was up here 4 times last month. I'm just wondering if there's a way the building inspector can use video conferencing or something like that, because every time he makes a trip up here, we have to spend extra money, and I'd like to see our building inspector make use of technology rather than making the trip up here. It gets really expensive, and it's also, you know, there's possibilities. Exposures, this might be a good time to try that out.
And apologies that I didn't mention that during my report. There is an updated post on the building department page on the website that does implement some building department COVID-19 policy adjustments. And I will also have continued conversations with him regarding virtual inspections or inspections via picture images when that's feasible.
Any other questions from members of the board? Yes, Dr. Cass.
Just one more. I'm wondering if staff would find it useful for the board to meet more frequently, just given how quickly things are changing, if there might be decisions that need to be made more often.
Yeah, I think, quite frankly, as you know, there's already been an emergency declaration. And part of the reason for that is so that the administrator can act quickly. I would anticipate that there could be the necessity of a special meeting. And my hope would be as we get further into this agenda and we look at the ability to have electronic meetings, that we set that up. But even though we are in a crisis, you know, this board needs to govern the town. And that's why it becomes critical that we do have the ability to meet electronically. So, and I think the town administrator recognizes that, I recognize that, but we also have a situation where there may be things that the town administrator will need to do fairly rapidly. That is in fact what transpired yesterday. So, you know, that's kind of the situation we're in. We want to make sure that we can act quickly, but at the same time, we want to make sure that the board is still governing the town. Ms. Ferguson?
And I would add as well that if something emergent came up and there was an emergency situation, the board via the mayor can call an emergency meeting with 24 hours notice, which would be outside the standard 72-hour notice for a special meeting that was called outside of a regular meeting. And I wanted to remind, just remind everyone on the board level as well that this is, you know, while it's similar to our individual crisis that we had last year in some of our mechanisms that we're using and trying to push out a lot of information to the public, the difference is that we're dealing with a virus, and so there are a multitude of additional things and services that we could offer, but we're also now going to be operating with a decrease in staff numbers, not an increase. It may get to a point where there's only 1 or 2 of us in office at a time, and that is going to limit our capabilities. I have made it a priority when we're talking about task lists to make sure that I am doing my very best with the most current and pertinent information to update the multiple links that are on the website. I'm not doing a new post every time, I'm just providing an update at the top of those existing posts specific to COVID-19, and I plan to keep doing that, as well as trying very diligently to give that information to the board in response to direction we received after the last incident that the board did not always feel that they were well informed and kept in the loop as things were changing. So I just want to remind of that factor as well.
And one thing the board may want to keep in mind is that in terms of what the town has to do to a great extent, if not almost completely, that those orders are coming from the federal government, the state government, and the county government. And so for the most part, what the town administrator is going to be doing is trying to make sure the town is in compliance with the orders that come down from other governmental authorities. Any other question or discussion regarding the town administrator's COVID-19 response plan?
It might be helpful to an administrator if we all agree that we'll rely on email for this, and we'll just check our email more often, and that'll keep it a little easier for the town to be able to communicate with us, and just everyone that's on the board, if we just watch our email with much more rigor, that would allow Corinne to be able to communicate, okay, I've covered the board because I did the email.
And I would remind everybody on the board that yes, you need to be checking your email. I would hope the town administrator will keep all members of the board informed in terms of what is transpiring. She usually blind copies members of the board, and you cannot get into communications between board members that include more than 2 board members. So definitely keep that in mind. Okay, we have a motion and a second to ratify the town administrator's COVID-19 response plan.
I have a comment.
Yes, please.
I want to say communication is a really important part of governing. Communication is really critical with this COVID virus situation that we have now. And I think nationally there's been a really confused communications and also a lack of communication. But what I want to say is earlier tonight you talked about people who couldn't afford their utility bills. And you were even suggesting that we give an amnesty and we pay for it. Well, I want to say there are a lot of people who can't afford internet in this town and do not have internet. It costs $55 a month for a DMEA hookup, plus you have to have the technology. I know 6 people in my neighborhood who do not have internet connection. And if people are losing their jobs and having to choose between paying their rent, paying their water bills, and having internet, I think the internet is probably the first one to go. It's probably the first non-essential. I think the town really has to look at a way to do phone or text contacts to the taxpayers in this town. I don't think we need to do it to all the people in the water system because this really doesn't involve them. This is about the COVID response in town for the taxpayers. I feel rather left out. I don't have a Facebook account. I don't have a library to go to anymore to look at the computer to write you guys letters. I don't have technology that's updated enough that I can download things easily. And I know there's a lot of chatter going on Facebook. I know there are multiple messages every day from you at town hall from what I hear, but I'm not hearing any of it, and my neighbors aren't either. And I'm just wondering, I think your conference room there has a great big window with a really nice paved area in front, and to have a COVID update center right there where it's not getting cluttered and confused with all these other little messages would be a really great idea. It would be spacious. People would feel like if they wanted to come down and look at something, it would be there and they're not cramped up. It's maybe spread out. We're thinking about distancing. But I did talk to Jeff Roberts. Of course, this goes to the meeting with the Freedom of Information Coalition, but he was thinking it would be really necessary to have a way to text or telephone people who do not have email for contacts. But I think it's important for the town to look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the suggestions.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Don't we have an internet connection available to the public at Town Hall?
Yes.
Yeah, so people can sign into our internet sitting in events outside 24/7?
They can, but of course, in this situation where you're advising people to stay home and to socially distance, that wouldn't help them. But yes, we do.
Yeah, so if someone comes at 2 o'clock in the morning and no one else is around, they're keeping their social distance, but they could access some of the stuff that we're hearing. Because the library used to be our center for that, and I don't know if they still allow Wi-Fi.
They do not.
Okay. Right. Let's do this. Let's don't get a bunch of circle conversations going on. We have a motion to ratify the town attorney's COVID-19 response plan and a second. Do we have any further discussion from members of the board?
Final public comment is that there is a public member who believes that DMEA is currently offering a free pass on electric and internet through Elevate at this time, and maybe we'll contact them.
Okay, thank you.
Do they hook you up for free?
I don't know.
Any further comments? I am not hearing any. We have a motion and a second to ratify the town administrator's COVID-19 response plan. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion and potential adoption of Resolution 2020-06, authorizing the town administrator to close the administrative offices to the public without a declaration of an emergency. Obviously, the situation has changed since this agenda was prepared. Yesterday, the County Commission, Delta County, declared a local emergency. At that time, it was believed that there would soon be a confirmed case or cases of COVID-19 in the county. There has been a confirmed case, and I've been told that there are some complexities to that because there are folks who have actually been tested and are positive, but it's my understanding that they also treat people who show all the symptoms and who have had direct contact with somebody who has tested positive as positive. So it may be that more complex scenario that we are talking about, but I think everybody realistically anticipates that yes, we will have COVID-19 infected individuals in the community. That appears to be the case at this particular point. Ms. Ferguson and I believe that it is necessary to close the town hall to the public to protect town employees. If we have critical town employees go down, we can't provide services to the community. I've also been advised that we are now at a point where we may very well be incurring costs that potentially we could obtain reimbursement for from other governmental entities, but that requires the declaration of a local emergency. Also, too, quite frankly, the orders that are coming down from the governor's office have been many and frequent, and quite frankly, that may very well continue, and so we need to make sure that the town administrator had the ability to implement any of those orders if in fact the town is required to do so. So based on all that, I did go ahead and sign the declaration of a local disaster, technically what it is called, so that we could move forward in line with what the county is doing. So based upon that, the town hall was closed, and I think at this juncture what we're really talking about with the ratifying that closure. And I guess the question is, Bo, do you think we should go ahead and to ratify and adopt the resolution? Do you think that would be the proper way to proceed?
I think it's helpful to adopt the resolution in the event that something comes up in town hall is opened again for some reason, but then the clerk in her determination, or town administrator in her determination, that deems it's appropriate to reclose it. That's been accomplished with the institution of this resolution.
Okay. Based on that, I don't know if there's anything we wish to add before we put a motion on the table. Based on that, I would entertain a motion to ratify the town administrator's closing of the town offices and adopting resolution 2020-06.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt resolution 2020-06
You wish to include ratification of the prior closing?
and ratify the prior closing
Okay.
of town hall.
Do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
I believe trustee Deal. Discussion from members of the board.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
there is no end date, there's no board ratification is continued, or any end date to the closure. The language should include something that says it needs to be re-ratified in 15 days, or something like that.
Mr. Nerlin, would you like to comment on that, or Ms. Ferguson?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't hear the question.
I think the concern is in the resolution itself, there is not a date where it would automatically terminate. And I understand trustee Bear's question and concern. I guess the question is whether or not it should be tied to the lifting of the order declaring a local disaster, or whether there should simply be a specific date.
So the goal with the drafting was simply to direct the town administrator to have that authority, and with everything being so uncertain, I think that the thought process was to just defer to the town administrator so she can make that decision within her authority, rather than having a specific date. Certainly, if the board is so inclined, they could tie it to the existence of a local disaster resolution being in place or order.
Yeah, that's one possibility. The other thing, I'll remind the board that, like I said, ultimately the governance of the town rests with the board. And if in fact the board has a concern about a resolution such as this, a special meeting can be called, and the board can go ahead and change that resolution, or something vacate it, do whatever they so wishes. So we still very much have that control. But it is up to the board. We can tie it to the emergency declaration. You could have a date certain. I think one of the things you want to be careful of is you want to make sure that you don't have a whole bunch of different dates for different aspects of dealing with this. We want to make sure that everybody is on the same page and that something doesn't slip through the cracks, because we've created something that becomes somewhat confusing. So that's my only.
Well, that would be construed, if there was a different town administrator and they want to keep it closed for a period of time more than necessary, I just think that it should have some kind of date, or it needs to be renewed by the board if there's regularly scheduled meetings and stuff to that effect.
I am very much open to any.
Mayor Stewart?
motion, yes.
I would like to add that this resolution is specific to COVID-19. It states very clearly that if you resolve this, that in light of the global COVID-19 global pandemic and the Colorado Department of Public Health issuance of an order prohibiting gatherings of more than 10 people, the board would be authorizing the administrator to close the offices of the town and facilities of the town. It's very specific to this situation only. It's not, I did not anticipate that this was a blanket resolution that allowed administrators to close the office when they deemed it was necessary indefinitely.
What if we added language so that when the new board is seated, they can take a second look at this and then they can decide if they want this stated in there?
The new board can always do that. They clearly within their authority. I mean, this is a resolution passed by this board, a future board, put it on the agenda, and go ahead and vacate that resolution or make whichever changes that it wishes to make. But I do think that, you know, if in fact you want to impose a date certain, that's fine. If you want to tie it to the declaration of a local disaster, I think that is fine as well, because obviously it is the emergency which is necessitating the closing. That would be fine, and that can be included in the motion to adopt the resolution.
Well, I would like to amend the motion to include it, to tie it to the disaster declaration.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on the motion to amend the main motion, which would tie the resolution closing town offices to the declaration of a local disaster? And I take that to mean that when the order for the declaration of a local disaster is lifted, this would also be lifted. Is that the way you intended?
That's what I intended.
Okay. Okay. So, on the motion to amend the main motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The main motion as amended is to adopt resolution 2020-06 with a provision that the resolution would be vacated and offices would be opened when the order declaring a local disaster is lifted. Everyone understand the main motion is amended? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay. Next item on the agenda is a discussion and potential adoption of local disaster, CRS 24-33-5-709. As I discussed previously yesterday, I did sign an order declaring a local disaster. By statute, that order can remain in place for only 7 days without further action from this board. So right now that order would expire on March 30th. It seems to me that there are two things we need to do. One is to ratify the adoption of that order. And two, I would strongly suggest that we extend the order out. My suggestion would be April 30th. And the reason I came to that date is that we will have a new board that is seated at the second meeting in April. And it seems to me that it would make sense to have this order in place until that board is seated. But this board, again, remember, this board can decide at any point in time that that board needs to be vacated. Okay, so we continue to have the ability, just because we say at this juncture that it will last to April 30th doesn't mean in some special meeting in the future, as circumstances change, we can't decide that that order needs to be vacated. But my thought basically was, yes, let's get this in place. Otherwise, it will simply expire on the 30th, which March 30th. And that seems to me not to make sense. Plus, the bottom line is this way it stays in place until there's a new board seated, and they can address the continuation of that order that's still in place at their first meeting. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so what I would propose would be a motion to ratify the order and an extension of that order until April 30th, 2020.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we ratify the local disaster order and extend it until April 30th this year.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion from members of the board.
I've had some questions from the public and I've seen some on Facebook. I was wondering if we could spend a little time discussing what this actually means for the town, what potential benefits are, what changes. Thanks.
Ms. Ferguson, do you want to discuss some of this, or would you like me to take a stab at it? Feel free if you wish.
I'm happy either way, if you'd like to, Mayor, that's fine. I'm trying to.
Well, I will tell you what becomes, critical for us. In terms of a local emergency, if you read the statute, the first thing is that it allows us potentially to get reimbursed for expenses that we incur in dealing with this emergency. And if in fact we do incur expenses, which may already be taking place, that's my understanding, and probably will continue, we're able to obtain reimbursement. And that reimbursement can come from the state or potentially the federal government. So that's the first big thing. There is a monetary reason to do this. The second thing, there are orders that are being issued by the governor's office. The county is relaying the most part of those orders. And it may become necessary at some juncture that the town be able to enforce those orders. And so that is the other aspect of it, because as people are well aware, we are now in an emergency situation where people are being directed to do things that they otherwise would have the legal right to do. Not to do things that they would otherwise have the legal right to do. We could find ourselves in that particular situation, and this emergency declaration would allow us to take those steps if necessary. That is the main reasons that I see. Administrator Ferguson, would you like to comment as well? If there's additional issues that you see, please feel free.
I think you covered them in a nutshell. I can tell you what I provided to someone earlier that asked me that was that with that declaration, it gives the chief that's necessary to modify the accesses to public places for public safety. It keeps the staff as well as the community safe from unnecessary and undue contact. It implements the town's response plan protocol, instituting requirements for the police department and public works when they come in contact with people. It triggers tracking and reporting mechanisms for additional expenditures so that we qualify for reimbursement. It gives the town the ability to enact individually shelter-in-place or quarantine notices should it get to the extreme that the town board felt that was necessary, as well as giving us the ability to enforce the executive orders that are coming down directly from the government.
Quite frankly, we would not have been able to close town hall yesterday without that work. That's one of the extraordinary things that was done. And that was done to protect town staff, to make sure the town staff will be able to continue to provide essential services. So those are the reasons for it. Are there other questions that you are seeing or that Administrator Ferguson is seeing that need to be addressed in regard to this issue for the public?
That was all I saw.
Okay.
That was it, thank you.
Okay. So at this juncture, we have a motion to ratify the adoption of the order declaring a local disaster and extending that order until April 30th of 2020. Any further discussion from the board? Anything else from the public? I'm not hearing anything. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2020-04, virtual meetings in emergency and/or due to coronavirus COVID-19 disaster declaration. As I have stated before, we want to make sure that this body remains in charge of the town. Right now, as you can tell, we've got people scattered all over the room. We've had to try to limit the public in attendance. It is a situation where we may not be able to continue to physically meet, but we need to be able to do town business. The resolution 2020-04 allows the board to conduct meetings by telephone or other electronic means. It has a couple of requirements that are terribly important. The board members have to be able to hear and participate in the meeting. And the public has to be able to hear and participate in the meeting. So there's not going to be any meetings that are done without the public being able to hear and hopefully see what is transpiring. But the bottom line is this is necessary, and quite frankly, again, the way I read that resolution, it applies only in an emergency situation. So once the emergency is lifted, then we would not have the ability to continue with electronic meetings, which simply apply only to an emergency situation. Why don't we do this? Let's get a motion on the table, and then we can go ahead and have our discussion. So we'll entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2020-04, virtual meetings in emergency and/or due to coronavirus COVID-19 disaster declaration.
So clarification, resolution 2020-04 or 05, so 5 in package.
Is it 05? Okay, thank you, 05.
I would move that we adopt resolution 2020-05 on conducting virtual meetings due to coronavirus, the disaster declaration.
Do we have a second? Thank you. Discussion from members of the board.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Trustee Barrett.
I realize that we're going to have some consideration of doing virtual meetings and taking care of vital town business. But the question becomes, what is going to be allowed to be discussed? Is it going to be an agenda such as tonight? Or are we going to stick strictly to things that have to be done, such as paying the bills?
Well, I do think, given the emergency situation, basically all non-essential town functions really are going to be pretty much discontinued, except for the extent to which employees might be able to do what they need to do remotely. So we could have some issues that are non-emergency issues that would be addressed. So, you know, the hope would be that the town continues to function as it currently does. I don't know how realistic that is, given the fact that non-essential staff is going to be trying to work from home. So as a practical matter, there may be a lot of stuff that is more routine that just simply won't get addressed until this emergency is resolved. I mean, that's my guess. But there's nothing that would prevent anything necessarily from going on to the agenda. And we will continue to have agenda meetings. They may be telephonic rather than in person, but we will continue to have agenda meetings and try to place everything that needs to be addressed on the agenda. And quite frankly, if we have one or two dry runs with this or it works really well, then we may do a lot more. But I do think probably that first meeting, we might want to keep it down to essential topics as we work out the bugs in this. But yeah, there's nothing that necessarily limits what would be on those agendas.
And the truth of the matter is, this may last months. And so we need to have the ability to do more and have a virtual way to do it is a good idea.
Yes, but instead of a call for 3 hours, potentially or longer, it's going to be hard to do. I think that, granted we have to have somebody to do this, but I think we need to think about restricting what goes on the agenda. We have to take a bill every 2 weeks. There's certain housekeeping items that have to be done. We don't have to entertain other things.
And that may very well be the case. I mean, just as a practical matter, it may very well be the case that it becomes difficult to make those meetings happen, and because of that difficulty, we limit it to what is absolutely necessary. That might very well be the case as we try to figure this all out. Other questions, comments?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it's going to be 3 weeks from now before our next regularly scheduled meeting. And considering there's so many moving parts on this, it might be a good idea for us publicly to say, here's going to be a dry run meeting in between now and then if we have agenda items. The main thing would be for us to be able to get used to this technology and at least have a dry run between now and then. I'm just making that suggestion.
Yeah, and that might very well be the thing to do. Perhaps even calling a special meeting, maybe just simply to update the board and the public in terms of the status. I think that might very well be appropriate rather than waiting 3 weeks to have another meeting. I think it's a pretty good idea. And if we have a limited agenda for that special meeting, it helps us see if we can do what we need to do. So I think that's actually a very good idea. And we definitely can deal with that after we decide to adopt or not adopt resolution 2020. I have 2020-05, is that correct?
No, 5 is correct.
Okay. So yes, Trustee Patrick.
I just want to say I agree with Trustee Newsom on that, and I don't know procedurally if this is possible, but does it have to be a special meeting, or could we say that for the next 2 months, we're going to have a scheduled virtual meeting once a week, and maybe everyone gets on, there's a quick town update, and then we adjourn? Just to keep in closer contact with the community during this time.
Yeah, my suggestion would be, let's see how it goes. Let's see if we can do this for one meeting, see what glitches we have, and see how workable it is, and then we can make a decision whether or not we wish to do that on a weekly basis. We may want to do that. We may want to have a short meeting every week where everybody gets updated. But let's see if we can pull this off, because I think we're trying to make a lot of different things work. I'm actually quite impressed in terms of how well things are working tonight, in terms of actually live streaming this, actually getting questions from the public. I'm actually quite impressed in terms of what the administrators pulled off over the last few months making this all work. So maybe we should push our luck. But let's deal with the resolution 2020-05. And then we talk about a special meeting where we So I would entertain, I don't think we have a motion yet on the table to adopt. We didn't, okay. Any further discussion from members of the board? Anything from the public? Please come forward.
So this is a question for Bo Nerlin, and I jotted it down on one of the notes to you, and I know since we have the emergency declaration of emergency, maybe we can lift some of the laws or the rules a little bit, suspend them. But my question is, in the town municipal code section 2-2-80, we've adopted some rules about meetings. And one of the, section A says, meetings of the Board of Trustees shall be conducted by the mayor according to the most recent version of Robert's Rules of Order. And if I looked in the 11th edition, which is not the most recent, but I'm sure it hasn't changed, but there's a section on electronic meetings, and it says, except as authorized by bylaws, which I assume to be our ordinances, the definition of an electronic meeting, it says by, anyway, I wrote it on your thing, I wrote brief notes and I don't have the copy, but I gave to you. But it says that we have to change our bylaws to hold an electronic meeting. And so I was wondering, does this have to be done by resolution or an emergency ordinance?
Bo, would you like to try to address that, Mr. Earl?
It was on page 98 of the version I had, which I wrote down the volume there. I don't know if that's the one that you have. That, Karen, you gave me my copy. Thank you.
Mr. Earl? Are you still there? Are you still there, Mr. Earl?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Did you hear the question?
I would say that with respect to Robert's Rules of Order, those are rules of procedure, and this is something that would allow for the town to conduct virtual meetings, if you will. I see a resolution as being appropriate for that. Certainly we can conduct virtual meetings using Robert's Rules of Order for procedure and doing so. The reference to bylaws, from my standpoint, that would be the equivalent of a resolution, right?
Okay. And then one other comment on that. It says it's advisable to adopt additional rules for conduct. So I was wondering if we are involving the public in public comment on the phone and the trustees, there might be I put this in your note, just a brief and very understandable rundown about how electronic meetings are conducted, and that should be available to the public.
Yeah, quite frankly, I think like right in that, we're probably going to need to set up some procedure, because one of the concerns when you do that is people start talking over each other. They don't have all the visual cues that we have here. They can be a bit problematic. So we may have to try to figure out some ways to make the meetings work more efficiently. And if there's going to be public participation, we're also going to have to address that issue with the public. Yes, Administrator Ferguson.
You said it was working. Oh, there we go. I can tell you in my brief research looking at Zoom and those type of products, they do have some etiquette guidelines, as well as they have a raising your hand feature. So basically, when you are seeing it visually through the video portion, you can see a member that wants to speak, a member of the board, or a member of the staff, or someone from the community. They push a button and they hand raise. And so what would really have to take place is that raising of the hand and being acknowledged by the chair before you spoke.
Okay, and I just want to add one more thing. If you have special meetings, contacting people to let people know this, especially if we have shelter-in-place orders in town eventually. So again, with this money that we might be able to get reimbursed from, since this is a disaster and an emergency, I really think coming up with a way to call the public, if people request to be put on a call or a text list, would be advisable. I know people can request email updates, and I would ask that we do the same for people who need to have a phone or a text update. And I liked Michelle Patterson's idea of the brief meeting, maybe it's 30 minutes a week, just to give that cohesiveness and communication going on between the board and the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, members of the public or for the board?
I think it would be really helpful is if the mayor can mute things, that would help us better time limits.
Well, let's do this. Let's deal with Resolution 2025. We're going to talk about setting a special meeting where we can try to work out the logistics of making this happen. We do have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2025. Any further discussion from the board? I'm hearing none. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, let's address the issue of special meetings. I do think that setting a special meeting simply to try to work out the bug on this is a very good idea. I guess the question would be when, and that may get down to Administrator Ferguson and what she thinks is realistic in terms of being set up, getting information out to board members, being able to put things in place so we can have a dry run. Would that be possible a week from tonight, or do you need more time than that? What would be possible?
Well, I do have an assumption that my jury duty that is currently scheduled for a week from today probably won't be taking place.
Is it the 31st?
It is the 31st.
Me too. You want to carpool?
We may carpool, and there is court. So that, if I had jury duty that day, that may be an issue. But I could, I can make it happen any other day. If you look here at the calendar, all those reds are telephone conferences and meetings related to COVID. So I will make it happen the best I can, but I'll be learning the system with you. So you tell me when, other than the 31st, just in case I have jury duty.
I
don't know if April Fool's would be the
Yeah.
that might be a mistake.
That might be appropriate.
Is there a day next week? Monday would be the 30th. Thursday would be the 2nd. Perhaps April 2nd might be the day. I would entertain a motion to set a special meeting for April 2nd. I would suggest 6:30 so that everybody's in the same habit in terms of the same time. And the purpose would be, one, to figure out whether or not we can actually conduct such a meeting. And we may actually want to even put something of some simple nature on there to actually go ahead and see if we can actually deal with the matter. It may be a situation where between now and April 2nd, there are things that happen, the situation evolves where that meeting will be used to deal with things that we absolutely need to deal with. But I do like the idea of setting a special meeting to try to make sure that we can do what we need to do. So I entertain that motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we set a special meeting for April 2nd, Thursday at 6:30 p.m. The only agenda item will be getting used to electronics.
Any other stuff?
Emergency updates. Yes.
Yeah, and the bottom line is what we can do is we'll go ahead, we can, I guess so if you're setting a special meeting, it's not going to be an agenda meeting like that prior, there's going to be a special meeting. I think that what we need to state in motion is that we're going to set a special meeting for April 2nd at 6:30. The first thing that would be on the agenda would be to confirm our ability to conduct an electronic meeting, and two, to address any other issues that may arise that we can notify the board and the public of within 24 hours. So basically, in an emergency, we've got to give them 24 hours notice. So that way, we're covered if things evolve and we need to add things to the agenda. Does that make sense? Would you like to make that motion?
So I'd like to make a motion that we have a special meeting that we set for 6:30 p.m. April 2nd for the purpose of training on the electronics and to address any other immediate needs that may have come up.
We have a second on that. Any discussion from the board? Anything? Yes, please. Trustee Bauer.
So, do you think we can get money from the state or the feds to pay for an upgraded Zoom?
I doubt it, but I've written down the question to bring up in one of my conference calls.
Any other questions or comments from members of the board? We have a motion and a second to set the special meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Committee reports, Finance and Personnel. Trustee Budinger, Trustee Kaninsky.
I just wanted to report on the bond issue that should have been scheduled for bid today, but because of the economic downturn, the interest rates going who knows where, it's postponed. And we are continuing with the bond issue, but it will probably be, well, we'll report more at the next board meeting, regular board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from finance personnel? Not hearing anything. Government affairs and public safety.
At this time, we have nothing to report of nothing scheduled, but if the board or the staff thinks that it's important for us to meet on any particular issue, we'd be happy to do so.
Thank you. Public Works Utilities Facilities. Trustee Baird.
Based on that, we anticipate meeting, I think, about this issue over, so we'll have to report again.
Thank you. Space to Create.
Nothing to report.
Tree Ward.
Tree Board actually has stuff to report. We met via Zoom last Friday, and it worked really well. So, I have one Zoom meeting under my belt. We have decided that we will hold a virtual Arbor Day, in that we will plant a tree with a couple of people out there and film it and then put it online so that everybody can see. We have decided that we're going to plant 2 trees in Apple Valley Park, primarily to shade the bleachers over there. And then we're looking at a 3rd bush to go into Coles Park at some undetermined date when that gets rolling again.
Thank you.
I have a comment.
Yes, please, Ms. Watson.
I was looking at the tree that was planted in Pullis Park, and it's really too close to the building. I don't know how large it's going to get, but trees really do spread. And I know the tree that was there was taken out because it was scratching the building, and it was right in the center. And it looks like some kind of cherry tree or choke cherry or something. I don't know.
It's a transplant of the tree that was in the far back corner and was planted per the guidelines that were given from an arborist.
It's just, it looks a little close, and it's a little close to the building. I want to talk about the street trees downtown. And where was I walking? Anyway, they're rather low. Oh, over by the old library there. They hit your face when you walk through it. Nobody's maintaining the downtown trees. If you look at the honey locust by Louis Pizza, it's on the building. And I know you can't take care of it all right away, and I guess this is kind of public works in a way. But trees need to be maintained and pruned throughout the years to have the right form so they grow in the right direction. And I think we need to start looking at our downtown trees and making sure that they're maintained a little bit better. They're very valuable. They provide us a lot of shade, and I would hate to see us come to the point where we're just annoyed with these trees that are just impossible because they haven't been properly maintained. So if we could look toward a pruning program over the next few years to bring the trees into shape and better road behaviors, that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you. We have come to the end of our agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you folks very much. Everyone stay healthy and we'll deal with the situation.
So, can I just ask, if people need to get a hold of town hall when the offices are shut, it's just closed to the public, but they can call, they can still.
That is correct. There will be employees in town hall. They're going to continue to work. At least critical staff will continue to work.
Correct, thanks.
And for any reason we weren't, and it was regular business